Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be back. I will probably give away our ages because I've waited to be invited to this conference for so long. It started when I was still a student here. So I've waited more than 15 years to be invited. Thank you. Thank you. I feel finally validated as a scholar that I'm here. So I'm going to talk about a topic that importance of which has already been stressed by several of our speakers. The panel yesterday, each one of them talked about how this is a personal objective for them is to increase diversity and access for people of different constituencies. So what I'm going to do is share a little bit of my recent and ongoing work on this topic. So when we think about diversity in workspace, mostly we come at it from the angle of organizational behavior. And it's well understood that diversity has several advantages. So it increases performance of employees. It can improve decision-making because you have different opinions going into the equation. Also, we know it can increase creativity on innovative tasks. So if you have very diverse teams, it's useful, it's beneficial, it can improve culture of the organizations. And we know that there are this whole host of advantages for increasing diversity. What still remains to be interesting, as Diego pointed out yesterday, was that still, if you look at most corporations and you look at their boards, you look at their top leadership, it still remains mostly male and mostly white. So what more needs to be done when we understand that there are all these advantages from increasing diversity? So I would like to make another push today by saying that, okay, let's take the consumer perspective. Because we have taken the organizational perspective, let's take the consumer perspective and see if there are any advantages for consumers. And why do we want to take a customer's perspective? Why?
They're the ones paying?
Yeah, for the same reason robbers rob banks, right? That's where the money is. So you know, we are marketers. We have to talk about money and profits. So that's why I want to take a customer's perspective. Customer's perspective here is that of an observer, right? So these are not people who are part of those diverse teams. These are people who are from outside looking at an organization. Let me skip to this one. So for example, they might look at the diversity that is represented in corporate leadership, or they might look at diversity that is represented in advertisements, for example, right? So I'm going to show you some data from two projects. One touches on the first part and the other one that touches on advertisements. But first, it's important to understand what really we mean by diversity, right? So there can be diversity that is observable, right? So I can observe that people might be different in their ethnicity, in their age, in their gender. So for that, I can just tell that you're different. Then there is diversity that may not be observable without significant interaction with people. So while two people may look similar, they may have very different viewpoints. They may have very different beliefs. They may have very different tastes and preferences and personalities, et cetera. So what becomes important when we're talking about the observer's perspective is this surface level diversity, right? So now I know that there are some people who look different, and then what? Because I am not interacting with these people, I'm just looking at these people. But so what is the implication of surface level diversity from a customer perspective? And what we know from prior research is that people make these quick assessments. They see differences at the surface level, and they infer that these two people must be different at some deeper level. So I look at Julia, and I look at this gentleman here, and I say, okay, they look different. They must have different beliefs. Okay, they must have different tastes and preferences. So we make these quick heuristic level assessments. And what implications does that have, for example, for diversity in leadership teams? So this is, in this project, I'm not going to go over all the studies here. I will spare you all that pain. But what we find in this project is that when people look at diverse leadership teams, they perceive these teams as more moral. What do I mean by more moral? We're not in a church, after all. So what we mean by morality here, marketplace morality is concerned with greater good. Okay, so not just good for the firm, but what is good for, more consumers. That's why we care about green products. So we are better for the environment. We are better for most people. We are trying to minimize harm, and we are trying to maximize benefit to a broader group. Okay? So when we see diverse teams as outsiders, we think these teams are more moral. And interestingly, perceptions of morality has direct consequences for consumer responses. Consumers are becoming extremely concerned about the moral imperative of the firm. They want the firms to do the right thing. They're willing to pay higher prices, for example, for products that are sourced consciously, et cetera. Yes, Tali?
So
you keep changing positions.
I know.
I feel like it's an experiment of some kind.
It is. I'll show you the results later. So there is some work showing that, diverse teams are better performers. Is there any kind of, do you see that at all, this link of they're just better at what they're doing rather than just moral?
Yeah, so there is a lot of research on that, for example, and not on all tasks, but on some tasks, especially tasks that require some kind of innovation, diverse teams are very good at. We are not really looking at the actual performance of the teams. We are looking at the perception people have of these teams. So we never even look at whether these teams are in fact more moral or not. They may be, they may not be. We're more interested in the customer perspective, that do they think that these teams are more moral?
Right, but do they not? I guess what I'm trying to ask, and I didn't ask it in a way that made sense, is do we, in terms of perception, care more about the perceived performance or the perceived morality as a consumer?
Oh, I see. So you're asking whether people think that these teams are better performing. Okay, so we actually tested that. We measured that. We measured if people think that these teams are more competent or not. And I'll show you when we get to the stimuli. We looked at a bunch of different things. We asked that, do people think that these teams care more about impression management amongst each other? Are these teams more competent, et cetera? We found no difference there. We just found that these teams, people kept thinking these teams are going to be more ethical. We found that people thought these teams would be better at taking perspective, and we find that that's what really explains a lot of this effects that we're getting, because they think that in these more diverse teams, more diverse views are represented. And because there are more diverse views represented, they're going to, they have to, in order to agree, they have to make sure that no single person's interest is overrepresented. And that's why I wanted to explain what I mean by morality is greater good, that everyone is going to benefit from it, right? So it's not any other, there are other definitions of morality, but that's not what we were interested in. So when people think that these teams are moral, it has very positive downstream consequences, and I'll show you some data. So here was one study. So this was right around COVID time we ran the study, so I believe 2020. There were all these news about, this was an actual firm, CureVac. It's based out of Germany. And this team was developing this COVID-19 vaccine. And there were a lot of news and press around how even US government was trying to get exclusive rights to their research. And this was, we thought, was a great context of looking at morality, because now you can think about exclusive right is not greater good. Greater good is that this vaccine should be available globally to anyone. And here we are, these governments trying to get exclusive rights to this vaccine. So we gave people this article to read and just talked about how this vaccine is being developed. and how there are this CureVac executives are in conversation, but they're not saying what they're going to do. So people read this article. Half of the people saw this article. The other group saw the exact same article, but these people were from different countries. So if you notice in the first case, they're all from Germany. In the second case, they're from different countries. And we made sure that people don't think that any particular nation is more moral than the other, right? So individually, each nation was seen as equally moral. There were nations that people didn't think were moral. Don't ask me why, but here we picked
Israelis who were doing the survey. For Tali, yeah.
For Tali. Right, I could look into that, Tali.
You should.
So people looked at this article and in two groups, and then we asked them, how likely is CureVac to sell the rights to the vaccine versus make it available more globally? Okay? And this is what we found. So people thought that they are more likely to share their vaccine globally, which is the more moral thing to do, if their team was diverse. Okay. Yes?
Do you know the nationality of the respondents?
Yes, it did not matter. Nationality of the respondents did not matter. Their political affiliation did not matter in any of our data. Their age, income, none of the individual demographics matter. Right? So in another study, this was also based on real life context. So I don't know if you guys know about Honest Company. There's Jessica Elba started this with the CEO, Nick Vallos. And it was started around the concept of using organic, non-toxic ingredients. That was their big thing. It's an honest company. It uses good ingredients. However, they've been in news every now and then with accusations of not using good ingredients, not using honest ingredients, right? So we showed people this article. The article is fictitious, by the way, but we used the actual CEO, and we said, that's the CEO. And this time, the CEO was the same person in the two conditions, but he was assisted by a team that was either diverse or not, racially this time. Okay?
Uzma, can you take 1 second and just move your microphone away from where your arm is sliding to the top?
Oh.
The top. Not that.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. Just anywhere else.
Here?
Hopefully. Okay, great. Let's try. Thank you.
Let's see. Oh, okay.
No gesture.
Okay, we can do an experiment on this too. All right, so one thing I want to point out is that we went through some pains to make sure, again, that each individual here, which, so this guy here we made sure that he was not seen to be, so this guy was, oh, sorry, what am I doing? My presentation is just not smooth, so that, you know, we have some diversity in presentation styles. That's all. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is this. Okay, so we made sure that this guy was perceived very similarly as this guy here in terms of their morality individually. Right? So people didn't think that one guy is more moral than the other individually. It's just when they came into a team, so it's a group level effect, right? So here we said, okay, you know, this is a company, it's been accused of using harmful products in their baby powder, I think this time. And then some people saw this article, other people saw the exact same article, just the team was different. And then we asked them, how moral do you think the CEO is? Okay, not each individual team member, but the same person. How moral is the CEO? How likely is he to have engaged in immoral behavior, such as knowingly allowed use of harmful ingredients, knowingly allowed testing of bad products, et cetera? And then we also asked questions at the firm level. How responsible do you think is Honest Company for allowing bad ingredients in their products. And then we ask them, how likely are you to buy products from this company? Okay, because eventually that's where the money is. We want to see what consumer behavioral response is going to be. I'm going to skip that. And we found people thought that the CEO is more moral if he is shown with a more diverse team. People also thought that he's less likely to engage in immoral behavior if it is shown with a more diverse, racially diverse team. Also, people held the company less responsible if the company was if the leadership was more diverse, and they said that they're more likely to buy from. I mean, again, in either case, they're not very likely to buy the product. But if the team is more diverse, this isn't working.
Well,
We'll get it right towards the end. Okay. So we can see that, why do we care about this? Because of this difference. People are willing to pay more just because the team represented was more diverse. And we've replicated this in several different contexts. One context was Walmart having sourced from sources that use child labor. Again, same effect. We've looked at how much people would donate to charities if there were more or less diversity represented in their teams. And we find this consistently, that if there is more diversity represented in a firm's leadership, the firm is perceived as more moral, the teams are perceived as more moral, and consumers are more likely to forgive their transgressions. They're more likely to buy their products, et cetera. Now, very quickly, since I just have 5 minutes left, let me talk a little bit about diversity in advertisements. Now, here, what we find is the following, that when people see diversity represented in the models used, so I'm going to use this exact context, right? So if you see diverse models in advertisements, what happens? What we find is people see diverse models, and they believe that the company has higher variety of products offered. So they think that their product lines are deeper. And the idea here is very simple. I look at different people, I think they must have different needs, right? So the notion that we were talking about earlier, that people see superficial differences, they infer deeper level differences. So in ads, people see different people represented. I think there are several different needs here. And then I think this company must have more product offerings, which in turn leads to a higher perception of firms' creativity. People think this company is more creative. Overall brand impression goes up. Purchase likelihood goes up. So I'll show you quickly a couple of studies. So this study, we showed people ads, very plain ads, just jeans and white T-shirt. In one case, people saw a very homogeneous set of models, and the other case, a racially diverse set of models. Males saw male models, and females saw female models. And then we asked them, how much variety do you think this brand has? How many different types of products they offer? We also asked them, how creative do you think this brand is? Okay, just from an image. And how likely, what is your overall brand impression? How much do you like this brand? Simple as that. And here's what we find. We find that people think that this brand has a lot of products, a lot more products to offer if the models were racially diverse. People think that the brand is more creative, although notice that there was no creative element in that ad, just plain white T-shirts, but they thought the brand is more creative. And people had overall significantly better impression of the brand. Okay? And what we find is it persists even when there is variety of the product that is signaled in the ad. So it doesn't only help brands when diversity is the only signal. diversity helps even when there is product diversity. So we found it in this context too. We've replicated this in several different product categories. And I was reminded of this project yesterday when Ben was talking about how we should try to disprove our hypotheses. We have tried to turn this effect off. Please, if you have any ideas how I can turn this off, I'd be very grateful. Can't seem to turn this off. People see diversity, they perceive that there is greater variety of products. In moisturizers, even in hand sanitizers, like how are hand sanitizers different? So you find this effect in all kind of product categories. Sorry, what am I doing? So here I used, obviously, racial diversity in this case. We used national diversity in this case. It was a bank. And we just had testimonials either coming from US customers or customers from all across the globe. In an app context, so we said this is a city exploration app. We used age diversity here. And what's interesting, I thought, in this study was that mostly when we think about segmentation and targeting, and I think that, okay, I'm going to reach out to this segment of 20 to 30 somethings. I would probably try to show them this ad, right? Which is very homogeneous because it's their age ad. But it turns out that this might actually be better because now they think you have greater product variety. So again, we haven't looked into that point very deeply, but we do find, for example, in this case, I don't have that study, but we do, goodness. But we do find that people said that they were more likely to use that app, pay a whole $1 more for that app on a scale from $1 to $5 if it represented more age diversity. So quick takeaway here is that corporate diversity is not only important from social equity and from team performance perspective. It can have downstream consequences at market level for firms. So if in your respective companies, there is still hesitancy to increase diversity in the companies, maybe you can make a case that, look, it's going to get us more money. I rest my case with that, and a quick shout out to my collaborators and to my two wonderful PhD students. I'll take it.